For 4 long years, he waited. Through scorching summers, freezing winters, and endless storms, he sat in the same spot, by the old gas station, staring down the road. Every morning, as the sun casts golden light across the pavement, he would lift his head, ears twitching at the distant sound of engines. Every night, beneath a sky full of silent stars, he curled up against the rusted walls, his tired eyes fixed on the horizon. The people of the town called him Odie. No one knew where he came from. He had simply appeared one day, a lone traveler on a road to nowhere. Some said he was named after a Greek hero who had spent years lost at sea, searching for a way home. Others believed it was just a name given to him by a kind stranger who saw something familiar in his restless eyes, a soul wandering, waiting. But Odie never seemed to care about his name. Who was he waiting for? Why wouldn't he leave? What had happened to trap him in this endless cycle of waiting? People tried to help. A trucker once tossed him a piece of his sandwich, but Odie only sniffed it and then turned away. A kind woman from the diner brought a blanket one winter night, but when she got too close, Odie stood up and stepped back, always keeping his distance. A young couple even tried to take him home once, thinking he was just lost, but the moment they opened their car door, Odie bolted, returning to his spot as if he belonged to the road itself. He never barked. He never begged. He never chased after anyone. He just waited. Then, one morning, something changed. A stranger arrived in town, a man who saw something in Odie that no one else had, a man who would soon uncover the truth. A single moment was about to change everything. You won't believe the miracle that brought this dog's story to a perfect ending. Stay until the end, because this story will restore your faith in loyalty, love, and destiny. The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty highway, its warmth slowly burning away the thin mist that clung to the pavement. The road was quiet, except for the occasional passing car. And yet, there he was, like always. A German shepherd sat near the old gas station. His fur was dusty and slightly unkempt, his eyes locked on the stretch of road ahead. He didn't move much and barely acknowledged the people who passed by. He just waited. For 4 years, Odie had made this spot his home. At first, no one knew where he had come from. Truck drivers, commuters, and the few remaining residents of the small town all noticed him, but no one had the heart to chase him away. They tried to feed him, and sometimes he would eat, but only after they left. If anyone got too close, he would stand up, walk a few feet away, and sit down again. He was never aggressive, never barked, never caused trouble. He just waited. The local diner owner, Martha Reynolds, 56 years old, with short gray hair, and kind but sharp eyes, had been one of the first to take an interest in Odie. Every morning, before opening the shop, she would drive by the gas station and leave food near the old fuel pumps. "Poor thing," she would say to anyone who asked. "He's waiting for someone. I don't know who, but I hope they come back." Odie had survived brutal winters and scorching summers, always returning to the same spot. He curled up against the rusted walls of the abandoned gas station, taking shelter from the wind and rain. Some nights, when the town was quiet, people would hear him whimper softly, a lonely, heartbreaking sound that no one could ignore. Every now and then, someone would try to take him in. A trucker once tried to coax him into his rig. A young woman even brought a leash, hoping to lead him away. But Odie never left. The moment anyone tried, he would pull away, run a few feet, and sit back down, eyes fixed on the horizon as if he were waiting for someone who promised to return. It was a cold autumn morning when Noah Patterson, 32 years old, short dark brown hair, lean, an investigative journalist, first saw Odie. Noah had driven through the town countless times, always heading toward his next assignment. He had noticed the dog before, sitting by the gas station, but never paid much attention. Until today. Something about Odie's posture, the silent patience in his eyes, made Noah slow his car. He pulled into the gas station and sat in his car, watching. The dog was completely still, focused, waiting. Noah grabbed his phone and snapped a quick photo. Then curiosity took over. Noah walked into Martha's diner, the scent of fresh coffee and bacon filling the air. A few regulars sat at the counter, chatting about the upcoming storm. Martha glanced up from behind the counter. "Coffee?" "Sure," Noah said, sliding onto a stool. "And can I ask you something?" Martha poured his coffee and leaned against the counter. "You're going to ask about the dog, aren't you?" Noah raised an eyebrow. "So it's not just me." Martha chuckled. "Honey, that dog has been sitting out there for 4 years. You're a little late to the mystery." Noah frowned. 4 years. Waiting for what? Martha sighed. That's the thing, no one really knows. She wiped her hands on a towel before continuing. Some folks say he belonged to a trucker who used to stop here. Others think he got lost and never found his way home. But me? She looked out the window at the faithful figure still sitting by the gas station. I think he's waiting for his family. Noah glanced back outside, his mind racing. He had covered a lot of human interest stories before, missing persons, survival tales, even reunions between lost pets and their owners. But this? This was different. This dog had waited 4 years in the same place. Why? Noah pulled out his phone and opened his investigative notes app. There was a story here, and he was going to find out the truth. 4 years ago, Odie had a home. He wasn't a stray, and he wasn't lost. He was loved. His days were filled with laughter, warmth, and the boundless energy of a boy who adored him. Lucas Carter, just 10 years old at the time, had practically grown up with Odie. From the moment his parents brought the tiny German Shepherd puppy home, the two had been inseparable. Lucas would wake up early just to be the first to greet Odie. The dog slept at the foot of his bed, followed him to the kitchen every morning, and waited eagerly at the door every afternoon when Lucas returned from school. His mother, Emily Carter, 35, gentle but strong-willed, with warm brown eyes and shoulder-length chestnut hair, often said, "I don't know who's more excited, Lucas to see Odie, or Odie to see Lucas." His father, Benjamin Carter, 42, tall and sturdy, always carrying the weight of responsibility in his sharp blue eyes, wasn't a man of many words. But whenever he returned from work, he always knelt down, rubbed Odie's ears, and muttered, "Good boy," looking out for the family. And Odie always was. He wasn't just their dog, he was part of them, until the night everything changed. The storm had rolled in fast, bringing heavy rain and wind that made the road slick and dangerous. The Carter family had been driving home from a weekend trip to visit Emily's parents. Odie sat in the back with Lucas, his head resting on the boy's lap. The rhythmic pattern of rain against the car windows made everything feel peaceful. Then, out of nowhere, a pair of headlights appeared, too close, too fast. Emily barely had time to scream before the impact sent their car skidding off the highway. The world flipped, twisted, shattered. Glass broke. Metal screamed. Lucas cried out for his parents, and then, silence. When Odie arrived, everything was dark. His ears rang, his body ached, and the smell of smoke filled the air. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear voices shouting. Sirens, and the sound of someone crying. He stumbled forward, disoriented. The car was on its side, the front end crushed, and Lucas was gone. No, not gone. Being carried away. Odie saw people, firefighters, paramedics, strangers, rushing to pull Benjamin, Emily, and Lucas from the wreck. He barked, trying to get to them, but someone grabbed him, trying to hold him back. Panic overtook him. Odie twisted, yanked, broke free, and ran. He didn't know where he was going, but he needed to find them. Through the storm, through the chaos, he ran until the world became unfamiliar. Until he found himself on a lonely stretch of highway, and that's where he stayed. For days, Odie waited. He wandered up and down the road, searching for the car, for Lucas, for anything that made sense. But they never came. Eventually, hunger and exhaustion forced him toward the small town nearby. That's when he found the gas station. It was close to the accident site, it had shelter, and somehow Odie believed that if he stayed there long enough, his family would come back for him, so he waited. For 4 years, present day. Noah sat in his car, frustrated. He had spent hours asking around town, but no one seemed to know where Odie had come from, only that he had always been there. But then, Martha had mentioned something interesting. "Go talk to Hank Turner," she had said. "If anyone knows about that dog, it's him." Hank lived in a makeshift shelter behind the gas station, a place hidden from the main road. The old man watched as Noah approached, his tired eyes reflecting the flickering light of a small fire. "I know what you're looking for," Hank said before Noah could even open his mouth. Noah frowned. "You know about the dog?" Hank gave a slow nod. "I saw him that night." The night it happened, Noah's heartbeat quickened. "The accident?" Hank exhaled, his breath turning white in the cold night air. "I was here, sleeping in the back lot. I woke up to the sound of screeching tires and a crash. It was pouring rain. I heard voices and sirens. And then I saw him. That dog. He came running from the wreckage. Lost and panicked. He kept looking around like he was searching for something. Or someone." Noah swallowed. "You're sure it was him?" Hank nodded, his gaze distant. "I didn't think much of it at first. But then, I heard a kid's voice. Faint, barely audible over the storm, but clear enough." "What did he say?" Noah pressed. Hank's voice dropped to a whisper. He was calling a name. A shiver ran down Noah's spine. "What name?" Hank looked at him, his face illuminated by the flickering flames. "Odie." Noah sat in the car, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, his mind spinning with Hank's words. "I heard a boy calling its name." Those words kept repeating in his head, echoing like a voice from the past. Odie wasn't just a stray dog. That boy, the real owner of Odie, had called out to him right before being taken away, but Odie didn't make it in time. And since then, he had never stopped waiting. Noah opened his laptop, his heart pounding as he scrolled through missing reports. If what Hank said was true, there had to be a record of the family who lost this dog, and then he found it, a report from 4 years ago, filed by Benjamin and Emily Carter. They had been searching for their dog after a car accident on Highway 214. Noah held his breath. The site of the accident was less than a mile from where Odie had been waiting. This wasn't just a lost dog. This was a soul who had never given up hope that his family would return, and they had no idea he was still alive. Noah sat silently in the car, his eyes fixed on the screen. The pieces of the story had finally come together, but a bigger question remained. What now? He turned to look at Odie. The dog was still sitting near the gas station, in the exact same spot, as he did every day, for the past 4 years. His eyes showed no frustration, no impatience, just a quiet and unwavering sense of waiting. Noah couldn't just drive away. He reached for the camera on the passenger seat, his heart filled with determination. If this story wasn't worth telling, then no story was. Stepping out of the car, Noah parked a short distance away, careful not to scare the dog. He set up the camera, the warm light of the setting sun casting a golden glow over the scene, highlighting the quiet loneliness in Odie's eyes. The camera started recording, and with it, the journey to bring Odie home officially began. He hit record. "This is Odie," he began, "and for 4 years, he has been waiting." The words came naturally. No one knows exactly how he survived, but every day, he sits in the same place, staring at the same road, waiting for someone who never came back. People have tried to help him, but he refuses to leave. He's waiting for a reason. Noah zoomed in on Odie's worn-out fur, the way his ears twitched at passing cars, the hope in his tired eyes. "But today, I found out the truth. 4 years ago, Odie was in a car accident. His family thought they lost him forever. And what they never knew is that he never stopped waiting for them." He let the camera linger on Odie for a moment before stopping the recording. Noah knew a good story when he saw one. And this was going to touch hearts. He posted the video on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook with the caption, "The dog who never left." This German Shepherd has been sitting in the same spot for 4 years. After a tragic accident, his family thought he was gone forever. But he never gave up. "Now we need to find them. Can you help find Odie's family? #FaithfulDog." Then he waited. Noah leaned back in his car seat, his eyes fixed on his phone screen, waiting for a response. But as the clock neared midnight, nothing came except for comments from strangers touched by the story. He sighed, about to close his laptop, when a movement in the distance caught his attention. In the dark corner of the empty lot near the gas station, a figure quietly moved toward Odie. Noah squinted. The man didn't look like the kind-hearted people who usually came to feed Odie. He was moving too cautiously, too silently. Then Noah saw the metal cage. His heart pounded. The man was trying to catch Odie. Noah couldn't leave Odie alone anymore. Since learning the truth, he had spent the entire day watching the dog from afar, making sure no one disturbed him. But that night, when Martha's diner closed and the town fell silent, a shadowy figure quietly appeared in the empty lot near the gas station. Charlie Briggs, a man no one wanted to deal with. He was known for catching stray dogs. He didn't care where they came from or if someone was looking for them. If he could make money off them, that was all that mattered. And Odie? He had been watching the dog for a while. Charlie approached Odie with slow, deliberate steps, trying not to make a sound. But Odie wasn't a naive dog. 4 years of waiting had sharpened his survival instincts. He didn't bark or growl, but his ears twitched at the sound of footsteps. He stood up, his dark eyes locked on the figure coming closer. "Come on, boy," Charlie whispered, waving a piece of meat in front of Odie. But Odie didn't move. He knew, instinct told him this wasn't someone kind like Martha or Noah. Charlie stepped closer, lowering the noose in his hand. Odie stepped back. "Don't make this hard for me, old dog," Charlie muttered, quickly throwing the rope toward Odie. But in a flash, Odie spun around and bolted. Odie ran as if his life depended on it. He sped across the empty lot, his paws skimming the cold ground, leaving Charlie cursing behind him. But Charlie didn't give up. He chased after the dog, gripping the noose tightly, his eyes glinting with determination. What he didn't know was that someone else was watching. From across the road, in his car, Noah had seen everything. "Hey, leave that dog alone." Charlie froze and looked toward Noah. Noah didn't stop. He ran as fast as he could toward Odie, his phone in hand, ready to call the police if needed. Charlie hesitated for a moment, then cursed under his breath, threw the rope to the ground, and walked away. But Noah didn't care about him. He only cared about Odie. The dog had stopped at the edge of the road, his chest heaving, his eyes still filled with fear from the chase. "It's okay, buddy," Noah said softly, his voice calm and reassuring. "I'm here. You're not going anywhere." And for the first time since Noah met Odie, the dog took a step toward him, a small sign of trust. Noah gave a faint smile. "You're safe now, buddy." He pulled out his phone again and checked the post. In just a second, he noticed something had changed. Within an hour, the video had over 10,000 views. People flooded the comments. "This is breaking my heart. Someone find his family. Dogs are too pure for this world. Please tell me he's getting help." Then something unbelievable happened. A woman commented, "I think I know this dog." Across the country, in a quiet suburban home, Lucas Carter, now 14 years old, with brown hair and hazel eyes, was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He clicked on a video someone had sent him. The moment the dog's face appeared on screen, his heart stopped. No, it couldn't be. He sat up, gripping the phone tight, barely able to breathe as he listened to the man in the video. 4 years ago, Odie was in a car accident. His family thought they lost him forever. And what they never knew is that he never stopped waiting for them. Tears welled in Lucas's eyes. His voice barely came out when he whispered, "Odie." His mother, Emily Carter, walked into the room just as Lucas turned to her, his voice trembling. "Mom." He held up the phone. "I think they found him." Emily frowned and took the phone from his shaking hands. She hit play, watching the footage. Her hand covered her mouth. Oh my God. Within 3 hours, Noah's inbox was flooded, thousands of messages from reporters, rescue organizations, and people offering to adopt Odie. But one message stood out. It was from Emily Carter. Noah opened it, his pulse racing. "That's our dog. That's Odie. We thought he was gone forever. Please tell me he's still there." Noah stared at the screen, his heart pounding. This was it, the miracle Odie had been waiting for. Noah's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He reread Emily Carter's message again and again. "That's our dog. That's Odie. We thought he was gone forever. Please tell me he's still there." He exhaled sharply, his chest tightening. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was real. A family had spent 4 years believing they had lost their beloved dog. And all this time, Odie had been waiting for them. Noah started typing, "Emily, I just saw your message. Odie is still here. He never left. He's been waiting at the same spot for 4 years. He won't leave, no matter what anyone does." He hit send and barely had time to set his phone down before a reply popped up. "Where are you? We need to come." Noah's heart pounded. He quickly sent the location and his number. A second later, his phone rang. "Hello." The voice on the other end was shaking. "Is this real?" It was Emily. Noah cleared his throat. "Yes, ma'am. I'm looking at him right now. He's right here." Silence. Then a choked sob. "We're coming. Oh my God, we're coming." Noah swallowed hard. "How far are you?" "We live in Denver now. It's a long drive, but we're leaving right now." Noah did the math. That was over 10 hours away. "I'll be here," he assured her. "Odie isn't going anywhere." Emily's voice cracked. "Please, tell him we're coming." Noah's throat tightened. He looked at Odie, still sitting in his usual spot by the gas station, watching the road like he always did. I think he already knows. The next few hours passed in a blur. Noah couldn't leave Odie alone, not now. He stayed nearby, watching the dog's every movement, making sure nothing disturbed him. Word had spread quickly. Locals started gathering, murmuring among themselves about the reunion that was about to happen. Martha from the diner brought Odie some fresh food and a warm blanket, her hands trembling. "I knew he was waiting for someone," she said softly. "I just didn't know who." A few truck drivers who had seen Odie over the years stopped by, sharing their own stories of how they had tried to help but never understood why he wouldn't leave. Now, they did. Odie's loyalty had never wavered. When night fell, the town grew silent. Noah sat near Odie, his breath visible in the cold night air. He pulled his jacket tighter around himself, his eyes fixed on his phone, the last message from Emily Carter still glowing on the screen. "We're on our way." He glanced at the clock. 4 hours left. Odie shifted slightly beside him, but nothing else changed. The dog's eyes stayed glued to the road ahead. Noah rubbed his hands together to shake off the cold, then quietly watched the dog. For the first time, he noticed something different in Odie's eyes. It wasn't just waiting. It wasn't just the old habit of 4 long years. It was hope, as if, somehow, Odie knew something was about to change. Noah leaned forward slightly and whispered, "Just a little longer, my friend. They're coming." Odie's ears twitched at the sound of his voice, but his gaze never left the road ahead. The sun hadn't risen yet. The town was still shrouded in quiet. Then, just minutes before dawn, headlights appeared in the distance. Noah jumped to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. He watched as the car slowly approached and stopped on the gravel lot near the gas station. The engine turned off, and the passenger door swung open immediately. Emily Carter stepped out first, trembling, her hands clutching her coat tightly, her eyes frantically scanning the area. Benjamin followed, his face stoic, but his hands clenched tightly at his sides as if holding back a storm of emotions. And then, from the back seat, a boy stepped out. Lucas Carter is now 14 years old, taller, older, but his eyes were the same as they had been back then, full of hope, full of longing. No one said a word. The air seemed to freeze at that moment. Odie had stood up, his body was tense. His eyes, which had been fixed on the road for 4 years, finally settled on something, but it wasn't recognition, it was something familiar. Odie didn't run to them like they had imagined. He stood there, his ears perked up, his dark eyes reflecting the faint light of dawn. But there was no sign of recognition. Lucas stepped forward, his voice breaking with emotion. "Odie. It's me, buddy." No reaction. The dog simply tilted his head, as if trying to understand what was happening. Benjamin clenched his fists tightly, trying to stay composed. Emily raised her hand to her mouth, trying to hold back a sob. Lucas suddenly felt a chill. "This can't be," he whispered. He took another step forward, his voice trembling. "Don't you remember me?" "Nothing." Noah felt his heart tighten. This wasn't right. The 14-year-old boy was looking at the dog he had once loved like a best friend, but the dog only stared at him as if he were a stranger. Emily broke into tears. Lucas couldn't take it anymore. "Is it too late?" he whispered. No one answered. Then, the miracle happened. Odie blinked, his nose twitched slightly. Lucas held his breath, not daring to move. Odie took a small step toward him, then another. Lucas burst into tears, dropping to his knees, whispering, "I missed you so much, buddy." As if a door to his memories had been flung open, Odie froze, his whole body tensing. And then, he remembered. Odie bolted toward Lucas, crashing into the boy and knocking him to the ground. Lucas buried his face in the dog's fur, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I knew it. I knew it. You waited for us." Benjamin knelt down, his usually tough demeanor completely breaking as he gently stroked Odie's back. "Good boy," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Good boy." Emily wrapped her arms around both father and son, tears streaming down her face. Odie made a sound, not a bark, not a whine, but something deeper, a sound of pure relief. Noah swallowed hard, his eyes stinging. The dog who had waited for 4 years had finally made it home. Noah turned away, pretending there was dust in his eyes. The drive home was quiet. Odie lay in the back seat, curled up beside Lucas, who never stopped stroking his fur. Every few minutes, the boy would whisper, "I missed you, buddy." And though Odie didn't respond with his usual playful licks or wagging tail, he didn't move away either. That was enough for now. Emily glanced in the rearview mirror, watching them. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. She had dreamed of this moment for years, bringing Odie home, but as much as she wanted to believe everything would go back to normal, she knew it wouldn't be that simple. Odie wasn't the same dog they had lost, and after 4 years of waiting in the cold alone, trusting humans again wouldn't come easily. when they finally pulled into the driveway, Lucas nudged Odie gently. "We're home, boy." The dog lifted his head slowly, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar house. It wasn't the same one he remembered. After the accident, the Carters had moved from their old home in Wyoming to Denver, Colorado. The house was bigger, with a spacious backyard, but to Odie, it wasn't home. Lucas unbuckled his seatbelt and opened the door. He stepped out, waiting for Odie to follow. The dog hesitated. For the first time since they had found him, he wasn't running toward them. Emily's breath caught. She exchanged a look with Benjamin, who nodded and stepped forward, crouching at the open door. "Odie," Benjamin said, his voice soft but firm. "It's okay, boy. Come on." Odie's ears flicked, but he didn't move. Lucas crouched beside his father. "You're safe now. I promise." Seconds passed. Then, slowly, cautiously, Odie stepped out. His paw touched the pavement like he was walking on unfamiliar ground. His body remained tense, his ears flicking at every sound. The wind rustled the trees, and he turned his head sharply. A passing car made his tail lower. He was waiting for something to go wrong. Inside, Lucas led Odie to his old dog bed in the corner of the living room. "It's yours, buddy," he said, patting the soft cushion. Odie sniffed it but didn't lie down. Instead, he paced. His tail was low, his body stiff. The warmth of the house, the smells, the voices, it was all too much. Emily kneeled, reaching out a hand. "You're home now," she whispered. Odie flinched. Lucas saw it happen, the way Odie's muscles tensed, the way his eyes darted toward the door as if planning an escape. Lucas's chest tightened. Odie had spent 4 years outside, in the cold and rain, surviving on his own. Did he even remember what home felt like? The first few nights were the hardest. Odie refused to sleep inside. Lucas tried everything. He laid out blankets, left food near his bed, and even slept on the floor beside him. But no matter what, Odie wouldn't settle down. Instead, he curled up near the back door, staring at it, as if he was still waiting. Waiting for a family that had left him behind, or for a past that no longer existed. Lucas lay awake, watching him. He wanted to reach out to comfort him. But how do you fix a heart that has been waiting in silence for 4 years? So, he gave Odie what he had given them, time. The house wasn't the same as Odie remembered. 4 years ago, he used to sleep on a soft rug by Lucas's bedside. Now, the house was bigger, it sent both familiar and strange. Lucas had grown up. The 10-year-old boy who used to run around the yard with his dog by his side was now a 14-year-old teenager. His walk was different, his voice deeper. Everything had changed. Odie lay on a new bed Emily had bought for him, but he didn't sleep. He wasn't sure if this was home. The ticking of the clock echoed in the quiet house. Outside, the night wind blew softly, cold but free. Odie walked to the back door, his eyes reflecting the faint moonlight. He was used to wandering, used to being alone, used to wait endlessly without knowing when it would end. Now, he didn't know what to do if he wasn't waiting anymore. Odie placed a paw on the door and pushed gently. The door wasn't locked. A cold breeze swept in, carrying the scent of the road, of freedom, of old habits, of the past. If he just stepped outside, he could go back to the familiar places, back to the gas station, back to the road where he had waited for 4 years, back to what he knew. Odie took a deep breath. He stepped forward, then a voice stopped him. "Lucas." The boy was standing on the stairs, his hair messy from just waking up. He looked at Odie, his eyes filled with worry. Lucas didn't yell, didn't rush to stop him. He just stood there, his voice hoarse with sleep. "You waited for me for 4 years." Lucas whispered, "But now that we found you, are you going to leave us?" Odie didn't look at Lucas right away. He stood there, half inside the house, half outside, as if he were between 2 worlds, one in the present, one in the past. Then Lucas slowly sat down on the floor, crossing his legs. He didn't try to pull Odie back, didn't reach out to stop him. He just said one simple thing, and it made Odie hesitate. "I can't make you stay, Odie. But I hope you choose to stay." Outside, the wind continued to whistle softly. Inside, it was warm and quiet. Odie took a long breath, his dark eyes staring into the distance. He had heard Lucas's voice in his dreams. He had run toward the boy's call for 4 years. Now, Lucas was right in front of him. Odie blinked once. Then, very slowly, he turned around. Lucas held his breath. Odie walked toward him. He stopped right in front of Lucas and looked straight into the boy's eyes. Then, Very gently, Odie rested his head on Lucas's lap. Lucas let out a small laugh, his eyes filling with tears. "Welcome home, buddy." Odie didn't leave again. The back door was still open, but the past was behind him now. He knew where he belonged. He belonged with his family. The breakthrough came on a cold morning, a week later. Lucas woke up early, rubbing the sleep from his eyes as he made his way downstairs. When he reached the living room, he froze. Odie was not by the door. He was curled up on his dog bed. Lucas didn't move, didn't breathe. The German Shepherd was resting, his body finally relaxed. His breathing was slow, steady. Lucas's heart swelled. It wasn't much, but it was something. He grabbed his phone and sent a text to his mom, who was still upstairs. "Mom, he's sleeping on his bed." Seconds later, her reply came, "Don't wake him. Let him feel safe." Lucas set his phone down and sat on the floor a few feet away, watching Odie as he slept in his home for the first time in 4 years. That night, Lucas lay on the couch, flipping through his old photo album. The pictures of Odie as a puppy made him smile. Then he felt movement beside him. He turned his head, and his heart nearly stopped. Odie was standing next to him, staring at him. Lucas didn't dare move. Then, slowly, cautiously, Odie placed his head on Lucas's lap. Lucas's eyes burned as he stroked the dog's fur. "You remember me, don't you?" he whispered. Odie let out a soft breath, and for the first time since coming home, he wagged his tail. Odie had come a long way in the weeks since his return. He had started eating regularly, sleeping inside, and even following Lucas around the house. He no longer flinched when Emily reached out to pet him. He wagged his tail more. But there were still moments of hesitation. The door. Every time someone opened the back door, Odie's ears perked, his muscles tensed, and for a split second, it looked like he was thinking about running. Lucas noticed it every time. His parents said it would take time, that Odie had spent so long waiting to be reunited that he wasn't sure how to stop. Lucas wasn't worried about time. He was worried about what would happen if Odie ever got the chance to leave. He would find out soon enough. The afternoon was quiet and crisp, the sky painted in soft shades of gold and blue. Lucas had just gotten home from school, dropping his backpack near the door. Odie greeted him, his tail giving a small wag as Lucas knelt down to scratch behind his ears. "You want to go outside, buddy?" Odie tilted his head. Lucas smiled. "Come on, let's try it." He had been waiting for this moment for weeks. They had kept Odie on a leash whenever he was outside, making sure he wouldn't panic and bolt. But today, Lucas wanted to see if Odie could finally trust that this was his home. He walked to the back door and slowly opened it. Odie stepped forward, hesitant at first, sniffing the air. Lucas stepped onto the porch, watching carefully. "Go on." Odie's ears twitched. His paws touched the grass. He took a few cautious steps forward, looking around the backyard. And then a loud crash echoed through the neighborhood. Fireworks. Odie froze. His entire body went stiff, his ears pinned back, his tail lowered. Lucas's stomach dropped. Another explosion of sound. Before Lucas could react, Odie turned and ran. Odie. The dog was already halfway across the yard, heading for the open gate. Lucas's heart pounded. He should have closed it. His legs burned as he pushed himself faster, but Odie was quicker. For the first time in weeks, Odie's instincts took over. The sound of fireworks, the open space, the panic, his body remembered survival. He slipped through the gate and onto the sidewalk. Lucas's voice broke as he shouted, "Odie, wait." The dog skidded to a stop. For a long, breathless second, he stood at the edge of the street. Lucas saw the conflict in his eyes. For years of waiting. For years of looking for something that had been lost. For years of believing that if he left, maybe he would find what he had been searching for. Lucas's voice was desperate. "Don't go." Odie looked back at him. And then he made his choice. Odie turned around. Lucas exhaled sharply, his hands shaking as he crouched down. "It's okay, buddy. I'm right here." Odie took one step toward him, then another, and then, with a soft whimper, he pressed his head into Lucas's chest. Lucas wrapped his arms around him, his voice thick. "You're home." Odie's tail gave a small wag. For the first time, he truly believed it. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow across the Carters' backyard. The days had started to get shorter, but Odie's journey toward healing had just begun. He wasn't the same dog that had walked into their home weeks ago. Odie had changed, not just in the way he behaved but in the way he looked at the world now. Differently, less fearful, less guarded. Lucas stood at the edge of the yard, watching Odie run. The dog's form was a blur of brown and black, his tail held high as he sprinted across the grass. No hesitation, no signs of doubt. Odie was finally letting himself be free. For the past month, Odie had spent more time outside, running freely in the backyard, his pace steady and relaxed. Emily had been so worried about letting him go outside without the leash, but Lucas insisted. He knew that Odie needed to trust again, needed to know he wasn't trapped. It was a slow process, but each day Odie grew more comfortable. The fireworks incident had been a setback, but it had also been a turning point. Odie realized, for the first time, that it was okay to be here, to stay. "Hey, Odie!" Lucas shouted, waving his arms. Odie came to an immediate stop, turning to face Lucas with a sparkle of pure joy in his eyes. He ran back, bounding toward Lucas like he had never been away. When Odie reached him, he skidded to a stop and jumped up, placing his front paws on Lucas's chest. Lucas laughed, steadying himself as Odie licked his face, his tail wagging furiously. "You're a good boy, aren't you?" Lucas said through his laughter, his voice thick with emotion. Odie barked once, a deep, joyful sound, before hopping down and running in a circle around him. It was his new game, chasing Lucas, then pausing as if to say, "Catch me if you can." Lucas couldn't help but smile. This wasn't the same dog that had been lost and alone in the world for so long. This was Odie, the dog who had come home. Inside the house, Emily and Benjamin watched from the window, their faces soft with relief. The past month had been one of rebuilding, not just Odie's trust but their family's trust in the world, and in each other. Emily looked at Benjamin, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think he remembers us?" Benjamin nodded, his eyes never leaving Odie. "I think he does." Lucas was still laughing, chasing Odie across the yard, his voice filled with the pure joy of the moment. Odie's running feet made a rhythmic sound as he dashed around Lucas, and Emily saw the dog glancing back every time Lucas called his name. "Good boy," Emily whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. Benjamin reached out, squeezing her hand. "He's home." It wasn't just the family who had noticed the change in Odie. Martha from the diner had stopped by earlier that week, bringing Odie his favorite treats. She smiled as she handed them over to Lucas. "He looks good," Martha said with a smile. "He's finally starting to settle in." "Yeah," Lucas replied, taking the treats. "It's like he knows he's safe now." The door creaked open behind them, and Emily stepped out onto the porch. "Dinner's ready," she called. Odie paused mid-chase, his ears flicking at her voice. Without hesitation, he turned and trotted over to Emily with a wagging tail. Lucas followed, smiling as Odie sat patiently in front of Emily, waiting for his treat. Emily smiled down at him, crouching to pet him. "Good boy. It's time for dinner." Odie sat, his tail still wagging, his eyes full of trust. He didn't bark or whine. He just sat there, content and calm, as if he understood that this was his home now. That evening, after dinner, the family sat together in the living room, Odie resting on the floor by their feet. It felt different. It felt complete. For the first time in 4 years, Odie had found his way back to them, not just physically, but emotionally. As Lucas rested his head against the couch, Odie gently rested his head on Lucas's lap, just like the old days. "Good night, buddy," Lucas whispered, running his hand through the dog's fur. Odie's eyes closed, and he drifted off to sleep, content. No longer a ghost of the past, he was home. For 4 years, he had waited, not knowing if his family would ever return. Now, he was home. But home was not just a place, it was the feeling of belonging. At first, Odie wasn't sure. Everything had changed. Lucas was older, the house smelled different, and the life he once knew was no longer the same. For so long, waiting had been his only reality. He didn't know how to stop. That night, standing at the open door, he had a choice: return to the road he had known for years or stay with the ones he had been waiting for. It was not an easy choice, but in the end, love guided him home. Odie's story is more than just a tale of a lost dog finding his way back. It is a lesson in loyalty, patience, and the meaning of family. True love waits, even when the future is uncertain. Sometimes, we spend so much time looking back that we forget to embrace what is right in front of us. Odie teaches us that home is not just where we come from, it is where we are truly loved. He was never truly lost. He was simply waiting to believe he belonged again. And in the end, he did. If this story touched your heart, help us spread the message: adopt, don't shop. Never give up on an animal who trusts you. Share this story so more people believe in the power of loyalty. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more heartwarming stories like this. And if you ever see a dog waiting by the road, maybe, just maybe, they're waiting for someone who still loves them.